final model timelines are coming in for this winter storm, set to get moving and head east in the next few days. That includes anything from the totals of snow and ice that are expected to the potential for severe weather that could impact some in the south. This video has the final overview for that winter storm, plus a look ahead at who else is looking cold and snowy deeper into January. Thank you very much for joining me in what could become one of the longest updates ever posted right here on the One Nation Weather channel. I want to go ahead and get right into the overview for the winter storm that's going to move from the central to the eastern U.S. as we go, especially through the next 48 to 72 hours, pushing from, again, the plains first as we go overnight tonight and into our Sunday. And then by the time we go towards Monday and early Tuesday, it will be heading off the east coast there and bringing with it, of course, that heavy swath of snow, especially if you live in these deep blue areas on your screen. Look out, because that is where, based on modeling ensemble guidance, I've refined this zone to show where that exact heaviest stripe of at least 6 inches of snow is anticipated for many spots. And then especially as you go right into the middle of this blue track line, we could even see a foot or more of snow in some spots. That goes from southeast Nebraska, northern and eastern parts of Kansas, right along that Iowa-Missouri border and through northern Missouri, through central and southern parts of Illinois and Indiana, northern Kentucky, southern Ohio, through parts of West Virginia, northern parts of the state of Virginia, through south central parts of Pennsylvania, and then into Maryland, Delaware, and South Jersey. If you live in any of these zones, you are anticipated to get heavy snow, and in many of these spots, it could go over 6 inches by the end of this event, and some spots could get over a foot plus. While that's a big part of the forecast, we are looking at ice and sleet in the transition zone as we go from snow to rain as you sink south. And especially in this zone right here where I'm drawing that yellow line, where you've got the overlap of the pink and the blue, we are looking at that potential for not only some ice and sleet, but ice and sleet that could at some point fall on top or surrounding some of the snow that is going to come down, really not only increasing your chance for power outages, but also disrupting the winter weather event and that snow accumulation. That's something to watch out for. And then also just south of that as we go through southern Missouri into parts of Kentucky, Tennessee, western North Carolina, and southern Virginia, these areas that are forecasting ice. Not as much snow expected here, but we're going to have still a potentially significant ice event in those zones that needs to be tracked. And if that isn't enough, we also have the potential for storms and severe weather on the southern end of this winter system. Down here into Arkansas, eastern Texas, Louisiana, as well as parts of Mississippi, we're expecting a pretty significant severe weather outbreak, including the potential for damaging winds, isolated hail, and maybe even some tornadoes getting in the mix as we go towards Sunday and Sunday night down here in this lower Mississippi Valley zone. And some of that could even translate in isolated fashion into Alabama, Georgia, North Florida, and the Carolinas as we go towards Monday with this pushing east. So all said and done, this is looking to be a very dynamic system. And the next thing I want to do is go ahead and give you a look at the latest winter weather alerts, and then we'll go into the timing breakdown using your models. All right, with that being said, I want to go ahead and give you briefly a look at some of the weather alerts that are already posted as of the mid to late afternoon time frame on our Saturday, January 4th when I am working on this video. Obviously, there's no severe weather alerts for the south at this time just yet because severe weather watches and warnings get issued a lot closer to when the event is actually happening, and that will come as we go through Sunday, Sunday night, and beyond. But for now, let's focus in on these winter weather alerts. You can see if you are in a purple on screen, that indicates a winter weather advisory. Not significant impacts expected, and not many power outages in these zones necessarily, but definitely some isolated power outages and minor winter weather impacts expected. A big chunk of Nebraska under these, and then you can see they're right on the periphery of these other alerts. We do have them here through some parts of Iowa, Illinois, Indiana, and into Ohio. And then as you go down here through parts of the Kansas-Oklahoma border, same goes with that Missouri-Arkansas border, the border of Kentucky, Tennessee, and then down there into some parts of western North Carolina. That's where we have winter weather advisories. Then this big area, and this does include southwest Kansas, even though there's a glitch and it's not showing, we have this big bright blue area. This indicates your winter storm warning, where the National Weather Service now has high confidence in an event of ice and freezing rain and or sleet, or especially some of that significant snowfall that's going to come down, and that is anywhere from Kansas, parts of southeast Nebraska, all the way through a lot of north central Missouri, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, into parts of Kentucky and West Virginia, as well as southwest parts of the state of Virginia. And then the two most significant impact zones are going to be right in here where you see this white, northeast Kansas, including Wichita and Topeka, and then into the north suburbs for now of Kansas City, Missouri. We are looking at a blizzard warning where wind-driven snow could be a problem by the time we go to the end of our Sunday. And then right here in this pink shaded area of southeast Missouri, right along the southern border of Illinois, and then there into northwest sliver of Kentucky. That is where we also have an ice storm warning for significant freezing rain accretion, and that could be in those two zones, especially where we see some of the most significant power outages. Not to say other areas couldn't get it, especially in the winter storm warning, but these areas could be where we see the most power outages by the time this event is all said and done. And not to leave you out over there as we push into the mid-Atlantic as well, look at this, the entire state of Maryland, same goes with Delaware, and then some parts there, Pennsylvania, southern New Jersey, and northern parts of the state of Virginia, still waiting on these winter storm watches that are in place to turn over to winter storm warnings as we get closer to the event actually occurring. And that'll probably get upgraded here within the next 12 hours or so. Now that we've explored those areas anticipating the heaviest impacts using the watches and warnings issued from your National Weather Service, I want to go ahead and get into the nitty-gritty breakdown here of all of the impacts from snow to severe weather and everything in between using your HRRR model and its timing as we go through the next 48 hours. This is a really good short-term model to look at, and it does a good job, I think, initializing this storm as early as tonight as we push into the middle of the night, as we go through the rest of this evening into the middle of our Saturday night into early Sunday. Already looking at a low-pressure system likely developing somewhere right around here on that Kansas-Oklahoma border, drawing up some moisture and some rain into parts of Oklahoma, northern Arkansas, and stretching into parts of southern Missouri, as well as southeast Kansas. And then right on the north side of that, that's where we see that transition here to where even some of the spots that are going to get blizzard conditions later on begin with some freezing rain here in central and eastern Kansas, the Kansas City metro area of Missouri, and then all the way over to St. Louis, possibly initializing with some freezing rain or some sleet, some of that wintry precip that's not snow, let's say that, as we go into the overnight hours tonight. A little bit of snow kicking off on the north side of that, but it's especially as we go through the overnight and well into the mid-morning hours of our Sunday when we start to see that biggest band of snow really getting going on the north side of our storm, and you can really see the three areas by this time. Here's your rain down here on the southern side through Oklahoma, Arkansas, and parts of Tennessee. Then you've got your sleet and some of that freezing rain here coming out of Kansas, and especially into that area that's going to get the ice storm there in Missouri, southern Illinois, and back into western Kentucky. And then up here on the north side of this, here's your area of snow that's not going to have quite as much wind, but still some gusty winds, some near zero to at least a lower end visibility possible in this as you come into northern Missouri, south central parts of Illinois, and its southern Indiana. And then we're also watching those blizzard conditions wrapping around with this heaviest band of snow that's going to wrap through parts of southeast Nebraska, parts of eastern and northeastern Kansas, as well as eventually into western parts of Missouri as the day goes on. Here we go, rolling that out so you can really see what happens by the time we push here towards, say, around 2 to 3 o'clock into the afternoon. Look at how dynamic this winter storm is expected to be, with low pressure pivoting over here right towards that Missouri-Arkansas border on the southeast side of it. That's where we're going to have that possible squall line from Arkansas back down to East Texas that will push east with all severe weather hazards as we go throughout the rest of the afternoon and evening. Let's zoom in, though, now here on some of those areas, again, at least projected to be seeing these specific types of winter weather around the middle of the afternoon during the main event here for our Sunday in parts of Missouri, Illinois, Indiana, into even Kentucky and Ohio. I'm not saying this is exactly how the weather and radar is going to look, not necessarily, but it really looks like we're going to be seeing our best chance of freezing rain right down in here as you come out of Missouri into southern Illinois and western Kentucky throughout this event. Then we see an area where we see freezing rain turning over to sleet as you get a little bit colder in all layers of the atmosphere up here into central Missouri, including places like Kansas City down to St. Louis, and then down here through a decent chunk of southern Illinois into southern Indiana. And then from there, that's where you've kind of got a sleet turning to snow mixture, and right on that line's where we're going to get some of those heaviest snow totals pivoting down through those zones where you see the blues. And that could include Springfield, Illinois, over to Indianapolis, Bloomington, Cincinnati, Ohio, surrounding spots, as well as those suburbs, of course. So really looking like a pretty dynamic winter storm event, and the winds could pick up to get to near blizzard conditions even in some of these areas. Notice here as this begins pushing east, we continue to watch our storms pushing through parts of the mid-south into the middle of the night here as we push through the evening into the middle of the night, late Sunday heading into our early Monday down here into places like Mississippi, Alabama, southern Tennessee. And as you kind of come on up here, still looking at some ice in some parts of the Ohio Valley, but also notice some of that uninterrupted snow could be right along this line and still continuing out of Illinois into Indiana, Ohio, and even northern West Virginia by this point. Snow wraps around the entirety of the end of this event, and that will continue into Monday as this band of snow pushes through all of Missouri and will eventually push through all of the Ohio Valley. It's not going to bring as much accumulation, but it will continue wrapping around the cold side of the storm. While all of that winter precipitation wraps up back into the Ohio Valley into the day Monday, we really start focusing on these zones in the mid-Atlantic that are going to get that heaviest winter precip. And let me tell you, once you start getting north of the sleet and ice that could be going on around Richmond, Virginia, and southern parts of that state, we turn into a heavy band of snow. And I think this zone right here, somewhere in here, we're going to get someone who gets a foot of snow, even out of northern Virginia through central parts of Maryland, Baltimore, Washington, D.C. You guys could be in for nearing a foot of snow if this forecast continues to hold. Same goes up there towards Philadelphia with at least several inches being possible. Also notice even northern Ohio, western parts of PA, getting a decent bit of snow, at least a few inches at the minimum. And then by the time this event is starting to wrap up, this is the furthest this particular short-range guidance goes, into the mid-afternoon around that general time frame here on our Monday. A little bit of snow continuing here, even into parts of eastern PA and to New York City, where we could pick up a few inches if the forecast holds. And then we're also looking at that continued snow wrapping back around the storm and wrapping up as it banks up against the Appalachians here into the Ohio Valley and the central Appalachian zones. Don't worry, I'm showing you the inches of snow that you're expected to see if you're in a zone anticipating snowfall. Remember, some of this is also going to be covered up partially by some ice or some sleet in some of these locations, but this is just your forecast snow using the National Digital Forecast Database, and I think it does a pretty good job of highlighting that your initial heaviest totals here and the ones that are going to continue as we go throughout our Sunday are going to come in this biggest band. This could be the biggest band of the entire storm, coming here out of southeast Nebraska, northeast Kansas, into northern Missouri, and over into parts of western Illinois. This entire zone looking at anywhere from around 12 to 18 plus inches of snow, and I think a few spots there that get these blizzard-like conditions especially could get closer to around 18 to 24 inches of snow before this storm is all said and done. Pushing over here as you go into the Ohio Valley, you can really see that snow stripe south of Galesburg there in Illinois, south of Logansport and Fort Wayne there in Indiana, and then right down there to the bottoms of these states and in the northern part of Kentucky, and then right in between, this is that heaviest swath in the pinks. Looking like at least 8 to 12 through a lot of this zone where I'm highlighting here, and I think some spots could even get just upwards of a foot there, and that could include Decatur, Effingham there in Illinois, Indianapolis, Terre Haute, Bloomington in Indiana, and then down here south of Columbus, Ohio. The heavy totals are anticipated to continue even into Monday, with around or just under a foot there and through a lot of parts of southeast Ohio into parts of West Virginia and southern PA. And even here, again, in this zone where the purples are indicating around 6 to 10, maybe even up to 12 inches of snow, somewhere in here I think we're going to exceed a foot. Don't mark my words on it, but I really do think we will here, especially around maybe a place like Baltimore or Washington, D.C., or in one of those suburbs. That being said, the last thing we need to look at is that freezing rain track here that's anticipated using your European model solution. First of all, here, just looking at the freezing rain as we go through the central U.S. overnight through the end of the night tonight and into our Sunday morning. Zooming in on that central region in particular, as we come out of Kansas into parts of west central Missouri, this general zone, before we even pick up on increasing power outage chances with that blizzard-like, situation that could unfold as we go later in the day Sunday, a lot of these spots at least a tenth to a quarter of an inch of ice accretion, and especially as you go into Missouri, I think the south central parts of that state, closer to maybe even a half inch in some zones of freezing rain. That's going to be enough for some very dangerous power outages. Shifting things over as we continue with this into the Ohio Valley. Through the day Sunday, we continue to see the freezing rain unfold here through parts of Missouri, Illinois, Indiana, Kentucky, and even, to some extreme down here into parts of northeast Tennessee, even though it's not going to be quite as bad there. Again, here's kind of your southern cutoff right along this line. Northern cutoff, I think, could be a little bit further north than what this guidance is indicating, but you get the general point. Ice storm conditions with a lot of quarter to half inch totals, and maybe even more in some spots, continuing all the way through southern Illinois, southern Indiana, into Kentucky. And then even as you go on over here into the eastern U.S., continuing along the Appalachians into parts of West Virginia, Virginia, and I think some of this could extend a little bit further up into the snow as well, especially if you look at sleet, some ice accretion, and this could be enough to cause power outages continuing even into the mid-Atlantic states. No matter how you slice it, though, once this winter storm is out, things are going to be getting colder than average. I've talked about it in recent live streams and videos. I'll probably talk about it in my next update video once we get past this storm as well. But notice the overall trend here across the United States using this GFS model, looking ahead into the rest of the upcoming week. Going towards our Tuesday, January 7th of 2025, the general flow is just cooler than average air, indicated by these blue lines sinking down 10, 15, 20, even more in some cases degrees below normal, coming out of the north central U.S., sinking down into the east. Notice some of this energy collecting back into the west, and especially into the Rockies there, and then sinking down into the Four Corners regions there. With time, something may try to form out of that down there into the south central U.S., and this is our next storm signal. I don't want to get anybody hyped up over who's going to see snow and who's going to see ice or rain out of this particular system, given the fact that it is still almost a week away. But something's probably going to be down in this general region of the United States by the time we go towards around Thursday, January 9th, pushing towards Friday, January 10th. And then you can see our GFS model brings it east from there. Again, the exact timing, totals, none of that needs to be discussed. We've seen tracks take the snow as far south as down here. Obviously, this track brings the snow on a track a little bit more like that. So we've got plenty of time to figure out exactly where this is going to go, but something new, another winter storm is going to tap into the cold pattern ahead as we go to the very end of this upcoming week. that's something I'll be tracking with you in future updates, as that could even run up the East Coast, and I'm sure you'll see the massive blizzard headlines going on about this already on some of the other channels. So make sure you're staying tuned and subscribe right down below for future updates on what's to come as we go deeper into January as well. That being said, though, that brings us to the end of what is turning out to be indeed a 15+ minute video. It's very rare you see these on this channel. Normally we stay around 10 to 12, but here we are recapping everything that I covered, as I always do. Big winter storm impacts are imminent here as we go into the next 48 to 72 hours, especially coming out of the central through the eastern United States in the zones I showed. Snow, ice, severe weather all being possible. Please make sure that you are going to weather.gov. That's your National Weather Service website. It will give you the most up-to-date information and alerts for your local community if you need it. Listen to your local authorities, especially in the areas where we're going to have the power outages being possible. And the problem with some of these power outages of very cold air could create even more infrastructure issues, even as we go deeper into January in some of the same locations that get this storm. And then, of course, we've got that new snow signal to track down the line. I'll be very busy right here at One Nation Weather, keeping you updated with the consistent, accurate, and educational forecasts I provide. So make sure you're hitting that subscribe button right down below, as well as checking out Weather Bell for the model maps that I use. The link is in the description. I'll see you in the next update. Stay safe, everyone.
One Nation Weather.